In 1775, Thomas Paine wrote a pamphlet stating that the freedoms of man can only be maintained by limiting the power of government. The pamphlet was called Common Sense. In 2015, it still is Common Sense.
I'm Elizabeth Smith.
I'm Mark Zaccaria, and this is Common Sense. Welcome back. In this episode, we will take a long look at the potential fallout from the Back in Favor proposal to charge commercial truckers $100 million per year in tolls to pay for roadway repairs. Representative Pat Morgan will have an in-depth interview with industry representatives to lay out who really winds up paying that $100 million. Jeff Richard will drop by to talk about Politifact. As always, we will ask and then re-ask the burning question, are you kidding me? But first, analysis of some of the top news stories affecting the Ocean State today. Liz?
In the closing days of its session, the General Assembly is going through a chaotic process to find funding for critical repairs of state roadways and bridges. Earlier, the governor floated the idea of erecting toll gantries on federal highways in Rhode Island to get that money from passing trucks. Her idea was met with howls of recrimination from all quarters of the electorate. As an alternative, the House Republican caucus offered a more detailed plan to pay as we go using existing state revenues. At a press conference announcing the GOP plan, Common Sense's own Representative Patricia Morgan detailed the cost savings inherent in the proposal. She contrasted the huge additional cost of issuing bonds for the money to that of exercising political will and redirecting much smaller amounts to the intended use each year.
So instead of borrowing the 700, and 700 million is what we're actually going to put into the bridges, we'll be borrowing 900 million. That $900 million will cost us between $35 million and $45 million every year in interest payments. That's money that goes to banks, not to our bridges.
Political will is frequently in short supply when it's required to head off an initiative already blessed by the leadership. In this case, though, Republican members of the House were optimistic because of the pushback the governor received when she first floated the idea. In fact, at their press conference, the Republican Policy Group emphasized a number of downside risks to the taxpayers using toll revenue to repay the bonds. Here's Representative Morgan's detailing one that is perhaps the most ominous of all.
And lastly, there's no moral hazard. No one can say with certainty that we will ever just have those gantries toll 18-wheel trucks. In fact, the governor's proposal originally had much smaller trucks. If the revenue doesn't hold up, if a recession hits and trucks aren't on the road, and we need to find money to pay off these bonds, we may, in future legislators, allow tolling of cars.
So the GOP plan offered lower cost, a lesser burden on already over-regulated businesses within the state, and a much shorter time until real repair work gets underway. What's not to like? Apparently something, because during formal debate on the budget in the House, Representative Morgan was forced to withhold her amendment seeking to pay as we go. That got the attention of those of us who are watching the proceedings closely. One of the first thoughts to go through the minds of many center-right commentators was that the fix was in, but for what? Folks, we didn't have long to wait to find out. As the Rhode Island Senate took up the House budget bill, it was announced that they would be resurrecting the idea of the toll gantries all around the state. Talk show host Matt Allen openly suggested that the installation of gantries was also about controlling the movement of Rhode Islanders. Another conspiracy theorist floated equally off-the-wall ideas. The most likely answer, though, is that the leadership inner circle simply wants to feed the trail of all the excess handling charges and legal fees associated with the big bond measure. Worse yet, you, the taxpayer, will be subject to the extraction of $100 million additional dollars per year from our already flagging economy, without a chance to vote on a referendum approving it. What could possibly go wrong? Mark?
Thanks, Liz. The tortured path taken by Rhode Island's proposed toll gantries is emblematic of the entire budget process just concluded this year. Frankly, many Rhode Islanders had their hopes up for a more responsive state spending plan. After all, our new governor had campaigned on a pledge not to raise taxes, and our new House Speaker had been swept into office in the wake of yet another of his predecessors doing the perp walk. More than one jaded political commentator here in the Ocean State was tempted to hope that this time, finally, the new broom would sweep clean. And Charlie Brown was certain that this time Lucy would actually hold the football for his place kick. Instead, what we got were plenty of new taxes, all dressed up as fees. We got loads of excess spending, even over and above the feeding frenzy Liz just described for the bond council activity surrounding the funding of tolls. We got increases in the salaries paid to judges and senior managers in the state's executive branch. We even got the across-the-board pay raise for every one of the state's union employees whose hourly wage is indexed to the newly elevated minimum wage. And that would be virtually all of them. All of this took place with the backdrop of ever-increasing operating deficits that no one in the legislature is even thinking about how to control. But wait, it gets better. Our new speaker, the purported friend of the private sector, went to the Museum of the Spanish Inquisition to borrow thumbscrews, red-hot pokers, and the rack to ensure that his majority towed the line. Even the vestigial Republican caucus agreed to eat their young on the Speaker's behalf when they threatened the entire freshman class to get them to go along to get along. Business as usual was the big winner in all this. And the big losers? Why, the hard-working, tax-paying men and women of Rhode Island. You and me, folks. We got to live in a state that cares nothing for fiscal responsibility when there are votes to be bought through completely open-ended entitlement spending. We got to see the elimination of voter ID and the issuance of driver's licenses to those who can't even read our street signs. Do you really think that the master lever has gone away? I'll believe that when I see it. Ladies and gentlemen, we are presented with the spectacle of a government of duly elected representatives who do not represent those few of us who actually voted in the last election. How many times do we have to be stuck with a pin before we say, ouch, and do something about it? But enough gloom and doom. On a lighter note, let's talk some international terrorism. Liz?
ISIS in Rhode Island? With only 1 degree of separation, we're not in Kansas anymore. Even now, people think this could never happen here. We beg to differ. With weak foreign policy and an agenda put in place long ago by the Obama administration, it's no wonder this could happen and did happen right in our own backyard. According to Tony Santos of the blog Redneck Republic, on May 31st, thousands with their families lined the tarmac at the Quonset Air Show, never suspecting that a barbaric act of terrorism would be unfolding in their own backyard. Just miles away, 3 men, Nicholas Ravinsky of Warwick, David Wright of Everett, Massachusetts, and Umar Rahim of Boston, walked a nearby beach and conspired to behead Pam Geller, a firebrand political activist. Geller earlier that month promoted the Muhammad art exhibit and cartoon contest in Garland, Texas, her defiant answer to the Charlie Hebdo Paris massacre. On June 2nd, just 2 days after the Warwick meeting, Rahim called Wright and shifted the target from Pam Geller to a member of law enforcement, referring to them as those boys in blue. Within hours of Rahim's call to Wright, law enforcement approached Rahim in Boston for questioning. Brandishing a large tactical knife and refusing to surrender, Rahim was shot and killed. Ravinsky and Wright have since been taken into custody. Santos goes on to say, "One thing is certain. When the boy or girl next door is 1 degree of separation, 1 mouse click away from becoming the next Usama Rahim or Nadir Sufi, it is fair to reckon that we're not in Kansas anymore." Unquote. Want to make the country safe again? There's an election right around the corner. Let's come together and do everything we can to eliminate our vulnerabilities by electing those who will face this ring of terror and actually do something. Mark?
Liz, that's it for news analysis. Pat Morgan will join us momentarily to have an in-depth interview with trucking industry representatives to lay out who really winds up paying the $100 million. But first, are you kidding me?
We now have a beetle for State Bug. Now let's keep the critter theme going by proclaiming it's Tick-Borne Disease Month. Are you kidding me? Hi everyone, I'm Miss Tick-Borne Disease, a contestant in the Miss Rhode Island pageant. And I wanted to bring your attention to the Rhode Island Senate Resolution 900, put forth to take on the next global threat, ticks. Yes, it's not bridge tolls, higher and higher taxes, never-ending spending, control of your daily lives. Yes, I wanted to bring world peace by eradicating these bloodthirsty monsters that want to drain us dry. The progressives. So I applaud these guys for bringing tick-borne disease to the forefront and naming May its official month. Hey, I see a pattern. First, a newly named state bug that eats things that died. In a month, we can celebrate another bloodthirsty creature. Yes, Lyme disease is worth the awareness when you're talking about ticks for realsies. But why would you need to do that when the state's falling apart? I think it's called a diversion. But, you know, I think they'll announce June as Drain the Taxpayers Dry Month. Oh, I'm on to something. Before long, it'll only be ticks and American burying beetles and crickets left to pick up the tab. Bye-bye. Are you kidding me?
Hi, my name is Brandon Bell, Chairman of the Rhode Island Republican Party. For me, the recent very close special election made me energized, inspired, and optimistic about our future. The Rhode Island Republican Party is united. We teamed up from across the state with a message that we are no longer fragmented. We stood together in an unprecedented effort to get a quality Republican elected to the General Assembly. We engaged in an organized get-out-the-vote effort. We organized a ground game like I've never seen that had us working to get our voters out until the minutes the polls closed. Now that we are together, first, people will understand us better and join us if they fully understand why we believe what we do. Second, people will vote for us if we can define why we do what we do. And lastly, people will respond and want to be a part of what we believe if we define ourselves and not let others define us. What we do simply serves as the proof of what we believe. Spread the message that there is only one option for those who seek balance, responsibility, honesty, and civility in the state of Rhode Island. Step up and join the fight. You can find us on Facebook at Rhode Island Republican Party or email me directly at bbell@rigop.org. Thank you, and God bless.
Welcome to Common Sense Rhode Island. This is a program where we try to make sense out of the policies that affect your life and come up with common sense solutions. And today I have with me Melody Majkut. She owns M&G Trucking from Pawtucket with her husband.
Yes, I do.
All right, and we're going to talk today about the governor's tolling proposal that has come into the news just recently and how it will affect the trucking industry. So welcome, Melody.
Thank you, Patricia. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I really appreciate your coming. I know this has been a busy week for you. You tell me that M&G Trucking is a family-owned business. When did you start it? Tell me a little bit about it.
Sure. We started the company 20 years ago. Started with 2 small trucks and have now grown to 30 tractor trailers, 47 trailers, and 41 employees.
Great.
My husband and I are born in Pawtucket, and we've stayed here. I bought a house right around the corner of the house that I was raised in, and we located our business here, and we're happy to stay here in Pawtucket, and actually we're getting ready to expand in Pawtucket. We recently purchased an abandoned piece of property here, and we're currently in the process of clearing it, and we're going to put up a 20,000 square foot cross-docking warehouse, and we're very excited about that.
Wonderful. All right, so you have 47 drivers, is that what you said?
No, 30 drivers, 41 employees, okay. 47 trailers.
Oh, okay. I got the numbers wrong there, but good. So tell me, you said you're growing, so it sounds like you want to expand.
I have been trying to hire drivers for months. The whole industry is currently experiencing a driver shortage. We're unable to fill all of our available seats, and that is also negatively affecting our ability to grow. I've been advertising for jobs and getting people in, and currently my trucks are doing pretty well with keeping the guys in there, and we need more. We want to add more trucks and add more guys.
All right, so tell me what kinds of things you haul in your trucks.
Okay, we specialize in what's called LTL, which is less than truckload, whereas we pick up various shipments from around the area of New England.
Oh, so it's not loaded up from one place. It's many
correct.
places.
That would be truckload. We do less than truckload, so it's a little bit different. So we'll gather various shipments, we'll bring them back to our warehouse, we will consolidate them into one full truckload, which then goes out into the country and makes a series of deliveries. Then, once that trailer is empty somewhere out in the country, it then would be loaded with a full truckload of product coming back to the New England area.
Okay, so your drivers go out of state, but they're actually Rhode Island. Most of them are Rhode Island residents.
Yes, Rhode Island. I would say the majority are Rhode Island residents. I have a couple of folks from Massachusetts, and out of our 30 drivers, 20 are what we call over the road. Those are the guys that are going out into the country. 5 of the drivers are local drivers, which are the ones responsible for going around New England picking up those various shipments. And then we also have 5 others that specialize in going to New York and New Jersey on a daily basis.
Okay, all right, so they're out and back in the same day.
Correct.
Okay, so that's a lot of miles on the road, it looks like.
And a lot of possible tolls.
Yes, yes. During the recession, trucking usually slows down, right? People just aren't buying stuff in the stores, so you don't have a reason to haul product. Tell me how the recession affected your company.
I will say the recession hit us first. I remember starting to struggle and things were slowing down and starting to have a hard time and commenting to one of my family members, gee, I think we're in a recession. And she was like, no, we're not. What are you talking about? I'm like, no, I think we are. And sure enough, as time continued on, the whole economy started to go down and everybody experienced the recession. It was very difficult on trucking. We struggled, but we survived. Actually, what we did was we used that time to focus on establishing a strong core team of individuals because we knew the economy would eventually turn back around. And once it did, we were secure with that foundation to now grow. And actually, for the last 2 years, maybe even 3, we have been experiencing growth. Sales have been going up. And I believe, again, maybe we're the first ones again to be feeling the effects of the economy. And hopefully everyone else will soon be experiencing a more positive economy.
Okay, and so during that recession, you just really kind of hunkered down,
yes,
made sure you got through it.
It's
getting better. You said you're going to be building a warehouse in Pawtucket. I know Pawtucket could really use that activity. Just talking with the representatives down in the State House, I know that Pawtucket has been really trying to get jobs and a little bit more activity.
Yeah, and I'm happy to be helping to provide them.
Yeah, too many empty and vacant things in Rhode Island right now.
And this property that we purchased was abandoned for 4 years, so nothing was happening there. And it feels great to be bringing new life into that area.
Oh yeah, I bet the neighborhood is happy to see some activity going on there. So tell me how you think the toll is going to affect. I mean, you've been kind of recovering from the recession, you're growing now, you're trying to expand. How's the tolling proposal going to affect you?
I'm afraid that, we're experiencing this growth and something like this kind of expecting us to take on this huge financial burden as an industry could negatively affect that growth, and it could slow it or stop it altogether. It's an added expense that's monumental in my initial estimations. It's hard to come up with those estimates because I'd be hesitant to do so now because the number expected for the tolls is so fluid. It went from $49.50. So at $49.50, my initial projections on what that would cost me was approximately $230,000 per year in tolls. That's not a normal cost of doing business that a normal company of my size, small mom and pop, can absorb. So now the governor has provided some concessions. That's fantastic. Unfortunately, I'm not able to take advantage of them all. I'm not doing business at the Quonset Point, so I don't get to take advantage of that beautiful $2.5 million grants. I'm not doing business at the airport, so again, that benefit will not affect me. We don't pay property tax on our commercial vehicles because they are used in interstate commerce. So the two things that I am hoping will lessen the burden of these tolls on my company will be the fuel tax rebate and the registration rebate. What I paid for the registration last year to Rhode Island was $2,000. So that's great. I'm going to get a rebate on the registration, but it's $2,000.
Next to
the tolls are
$230,000.
Well, let's say the tolls have now been cut in half. So even at a great positive estimate, okay, so now we're down from $230 to say $115, $115,000 additional cost to my small company is still hard to swallow. And then the fuel tax, I need some more information on that. I paid $98,000 in fuel tax on the diesel I purchased in Rhode Island last year. How much of that went to the state and how much of that will I be able to claim as a rebate is still unsure.
Yeah, the proposal has just been kind of rushed through, so I don't even know. I don't even know that it stays at 30 or 50 or maybe goes higher.
And 30 is just one of the tolls. Aren't they going to be 17?
Well, it's out and in.
And until I know exactly where those toll locations are, because my trucks are going on 146, they're going on 610, they're going on 295, they're going on 95, and they're on 195. That $30 toll is the estimate just for 95. There's 4 others yet to be calculated into the cost of that per year for my company. It's scary.
Yep, it can be very expensive. We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to do a "Are you kidding me?" segment, and we'll be right back.
What's the House of Representatives to do if it begins to really question its own certitude that everything in the Ocean State is just hunky-dory? Are some of them starting to realize that they've been lying to themselves? Are you kidding me? That may be what just happened, folks, with the curious case of House Bill 5086. It was earnestly and steadfastly entered as legislation by Reps. Blajewski, Maldonado, Solomon, Kazarian, and Regenberg. In their wide-eyed innocence, they proposed that every graduate of a Rhode Island institution of higher education should qualify for a 10% credit on their state income taxes for 10 years if they both lived and worked in Little Rhodey. Spoiler alert, the reason they're not living here today is not because of high income taxes. It's because before you pay such taxes, you first have to have a job and be taking home a paycheck. Okay, so these reps missed that connection. But their bill is still an admission that all is not well in the Ocean State. What happened next? Why, their colleagues on the House Finance Committee said to them the very thing my wife Ruth says to me every time I want to buy an open cockpit biplane. Where's that money going to come from? Or, to put it in House speak, held for further study. Does this mean Messrs. Blajewski, Maldonado, Solomon, Kazarian, and Regenberg will now forget that all is not well in the land of Apponog? Probably. Are you kidding me?
What do I stand for? What do I stand for? Most nights I don't know anymore.
a small family-owned trucking business here in Pawtucket. Been in business for about 20 years, trying to grow jobs here in Rhode Island, certainly delivering a lot of products to our stores. Melody, we were just talking about kind of the hazard of diversion of trucks, that they will go around Rhode Island. They won't even come close to Rhode Island if there's that extra. They could. Yeah. Absolutely.
I can't, because I'm based here. So I'll be stuck holding the majority of the burden, as the other out-of-state carriers can simply avoid the toll.
Well, and I know you want to stay in Pawtucket. You want to grow here. You
Absolutely.
just bought a piece of land so you could grow.
I love Rhode Island and I love Pawtucket.
I keep thinking that there's Seekonk and Attleboro and places that are very close that aren't in Rhode Island that companies could move to.
Sure, we could. I'm committed to staying here. I'm committed to Pawtucket. I'm a lifelong resident of this city, and I want to grow my company here.
Yeah. You know, I've looked at the proposal. They're trying to give $13.5 million to you. That actually adds to the cost, I think, to the state. You take from one pot, put in another pot. The pot still has to be filled somewhere. Yeah. But what I haven't seen is the details of that. I know you don't know either.
I would love to get more details on exactly how those rebates will be applied for. I read something about based on need. That's a concern for me. I don't understand what that means.
Based upon need, yep, okay.
Is it a first come, first served basis? Are we going to exceed that $13.5 million and then someone's left without getting one of those benefits? There are a lot of questions, Patricia.
Absolutely, no details.
We need some time to get the answers.
And I know that I have asked for and have still not received the data on how many trucks are from out of state, just passing through, and how many are in state. And I have asked repeatedly. And honestly, that worries me, because I know DOT has the data. They've said they have the data. And every time I put my hand out for it, it comes back empty. You know, I know the folks probably agree with my skepticism. If it was in their favor, I think they'd have it right up front. If it's not in their favor, they're going to keep it back. So until all of these questions are answered, this is just, to me, a bad way to go. And I think you know, the Republicans, we put forward a plan not to toll anybody. I don't want the moral hazard. I don't want you paying tolls. I don't want out-of-state truckers paying tolls, and I certainly don't want passenger cars paying tolls. We're not a lightly taxed state.
No, we pay a lot of taxes here.
Yeah.
The cost of doing business here is very high. There's been a lot of people saying how we rank the last on our roads and bridges in the entire country. We're also ranking pretty low with a place to do business.
A place to do business.
It's not an easy place to do business.
That's right. You must have a lot of other, you talked about the big fees, but you must have a lot of those little nicky ones that come out.
Insurance, everything adds up, and it's cheaper. It can be cheaper to do business elsewhere, as we've unfortunately experienced with a lot of the loss of our manufacturing industry.
Right.
There's a reason those companies aren't here anymore.
There's a reason their companies have left. Yeah. Exactly, and are not coming back right
and
now.
Now the remaining manufacturers will now be faced with this added expense of these tolls.
Because everything they use is brought in by
a truck. Those manufacturers need us to bring in their raw products used in the raw materials used in the manufacturing of their products, and then once their products are manufactured, they need the trucks to get it out. It will also negatively impact them. I'd love to see some people from the manufacturing industry coming out and speaking against this proposal as well.
Yeah, it is trucks touch every person, every business in Rhode Island.
The governor is a jobs governor. She's going to create more jobs, and I believe she also mentioned something about specifically trying to help the manufacturing industry. I believe this proposal will not help the manufacturing industry.
Somebody's got to pay these tolls.
Exactly.
And it just can't be squeezed totally out of you.
Right. And manufacturing is a growth business for the rest of the economy. If we can support the manufacturers, that will trickle on to my industry as well as many others.
Sure. It's always been said that manufacturing creates wealth.
That's
it's one
correct.
of the few things that
That's
just doesn't
correct.
pass wealth around. They
That's
create
right.
it. They take raw materials
Yes, they
and
do.
make something out of
We need
it.
to help them here and
We
get more
absolutely
here.
do.
Yes.
We do. It's a good place for people to get all kinds of jobs. And this could hurt them. Like you say, everything they get, everything they ship.
Right.
It's trucks. You know, and you don't have to pass judgment on the goodness of our proposal. I think it's a great proposal. We actually take $3.5 billion a year just from Rhode Islanders. Our budget is 8.7. A lot of that's federal money. But a good chunk of it, $3.5 billion, comes from Rhode Islanders, from you, from people in their homes, everybody.
I know we're paying a lot, Patricia.
Less than 2% of that, less than 2% of it, if we put it into bridges, we can fix them over a period of time, 10 to 12 years. We'll get the same amount of money with the money coming out of our current budget.
Then isn't there somewhere that we can identify areas to cut back on, that we can get that 2% to maintain the bridges?
Wonderful question, Melody.
I've been paying all of these various fees I've mentioned with the expectation that that money was being used to repair the roads and bridges for my trucks to drive on. Can't it be better spent?
I think it can. I think that's a wonderful question. And if we take it out of current spending, out of the taxes we already pay.
Then we don't have the debt and the interest.
We've just, last year in the budget, I voted against it, but we raised registration fees, we raised license renewal fees,
Yeah.
we raised fees for inspecting your car. That was supposed to go into this. Where is it? Right? Let's take that money. Let's find efficiencies, waste in government, and devote it to our #1 priority, which is the safety of people driving on our bridges.
If this is such a critical issue at this point, let's find the money to fix it, but let's not find the money from one particular industry. It will hurt that industry.
Well, by doing it from current spending, we don't hurt anybody. Right? We don't hurt the trucking industry, we don't hurt manufacturers, we don't hurt the grocery stores, we don't hurt consumers. It's just money that we're already taking. We need to shuffle it around somewhere. Everybody knows there's plenty of waste in government. Let's find it. Let's make the commitment. And I get it. I'm asking for $60 million a year, maybe $70 million a year. But if we do that for 10 years, we got $700 million, right? That's the same amount that was in the original proposal. And it doesn't cost us a dime of interest.
It makes sense.
When you borrow, I mean, when I saw the original proposal, it was almost $1 billion worth of borrowing. I'm a financial advisor. I know you probably don't know that. But borrowing is costs.
Of course. And
interest.
And I believe they want to extend the term for the
to 30
borrowing.
years.
Me as a purchaser of large equipment, we try to keep those loans shorter. We don't want to pay longer. We want to pay shorter and less interest.
Cuts the interest. If you borrow $1 for 30 years, it's going to cost you more than $2 to pay it back.
Why would anybody do that?
Is that a good deal for Rhode Island?
Doesn't sound like it to me.
And it's certainly not a good deal for trucking. Listen, I really want to thank you for coming and defending trucking and letting people out there know how vital you are to commerce here, to their well-being.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to come here and say that.
Yeah, I honestly, I hope that somebody will look at the Republican proposal, the decision makers up there, with an open mind, because it prevents the damage, and it certainly will keep your industry rolling on the roads and bringing cheaper goods to Rhode Islanders.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you very much.
As a subscriber to the Providence Journal, I get my political junkie buttons pushed all the time. But what really gets to me is the very casual way the Journal deals with political facts. I know that seems like an oxymoron, putting political and facts in the same breath. It's like the management of statistics generally. There is an argument to be made over every statistic and every political position. Who benefits when you argue both sides with the same numbers or facts? So I asked myself if the Politifact efforts in the ProJo are local or is there a national connection? Well, it seems that Politifact has a much broader reach than just Rhode Island. It is part of a very broad-reaching effort that began at the Tampa Bay Times, the largest newspaper in Florida. Politifact is a division of that paper which is independently owned by the Poynter Institute. Now, that institute is a school for journalists in St. Petersburg, Florida. So what is the goal here? Well, they claim that their reporters and editors fact-check whatever they want to concerning what politicians have to say. After they have researched the statements, they indicate what they find on a truthometer. You get to be true, mostly true, half true, mostly false, false, or just pants on fire. When an article is written, it has to go to 3 editors for approval before publication. Rather than wasting any more of your time on the ways of this phenomenon, I refer you to Politifact.com. When you get there, you will quickly see that this new form of public policy management really does have an agenda. Let's take the local Politifact folks at the ProJo. Specifically, the journal's effort at describing the facts surrounding the Rhode Island Convention Center, the Dunk, and the Vets Auditorium. All of these managed by a quasi-governmental body that costs a lot of taxpayer money to run, the Convention Center Authority. We here at Common Sense have brought guests to the show who have pointed out how things have come to be and what's wrong with the way the state is handling things. It's an embarrassing topic. But like all things in Rhode Island, there are special interests who are very happy with the status quo. And like many events in Rhode Island, someone gets it wrong. I read the Sunday, June 7th ProJo and learned that Representative Patricia Morgan, our host here at Common Sense, was mostly false. The headline reads, quote, "Lawmaker failed to put convention center claim in context," unquote. So I read what they had to say. I didn't get enough of the background of the Convention Center Authority to really understand. I did get that an interpretation of statistics can lead to getting a feeling one way or the other about political facts. But gee, what good was it to tell me that Representative Morgan was mostly false? I was preparing a short blast to the ProJo when I came upon the same article in the Politifact.com Rhode Island website. But this time, the headline read, "Representative Morgan says the convention center was sold with the pledge that it wouldn't cost taxpayers," unquote. And the Politifact meter said she was mostly true. Now, all the words in the article are the same except the last sentence, I guess, which now gives her statement the mostly true nod. Gee whiz, folks. If I were the Politifact head shed in Tampa, I would get rid of the ProJo crew. And I would be writing an effusive apology to Representative Morgan, who now has to explain to her constituents that what they read, if they read it, was bad journalism. I think the staff at the Poynter Institute will use this one as a case study in what not to do. I don't think we as a society are profiting from this form of journalism, as it so easily brandishes out of context words with the tar of a new statistic. How many pants on fire scores did you get, politicians? Thank you for watching, and God bless.